Hi guys, it's Kaycee Flowers and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be talking about the rise of the spiritual but not religious. Over the course of the last few decades, there's been noticeable shifts away from religion and into people who identify as spiritual. It's not just you. There really are more people talking about spirituality, tarot, astrology, meditation, angels, ancestors, spirits, intuition, third eye, woo-woo, new age bullshit. I say bullshit with love, of course. That's definitely my kind of bullshit. In fact, the Washington Post just last year published an article called "Church Membership in the US Has Fallen Below the Majority for the First Time in Nearly a Century." Jonathan Edmiston, pastor of Bible Baptist Church in Statesboro, said that he's lost probably 50% of his congregation in the last 5 years. People are moving away from religion. So if you're here because you're questioning your religion, but you don't want to completely abandon all of the good things that your faith has taught you, welcome. There are many of us, and there's more and more by the day. But what does this mean, spiritual but not religious? If we remove religion from the equation, what's left that actually defines spirituality? This is an ongoing question that I'll be exploring in this video and many more in the future, because the definition of the word spiritual is almost intentionally ambiguous to allow for independent expression and personal beliefs. But that doesn't mean that we don't exist. In fact, the Public Religion Research Institute did a study in 2017 that found that 1 in 5 Americans are spiritual but not religious. And there's research from the Pew Research Center that suggests that that's growing even more by the day. But that being said, the actual phrase spiritual but not religious, especially as something that you can religiously identify with, is still pretty new. The first notable time that spirituality was researched independently of religion was in 1989. This researcher with the last name Roof studied baby boomers. He asked them if they felt religious and if they felt spiritual. At the time, that was really significant because it was breaking the idea that religiousness inherently equals being spiritual. And it allowed for people to define themselves on a spectrum of both. So that happened in 1989, but it really took until about 1997 for other researchers to catch up. And it was during this year that an article was published called "Religiousness and Spirituality: Unfuzzying the Fuzzy," which was published in the Journal for the Scientific Study of Religion. This article was the first academic attempt, at least that I could find, to define spirituality as something independent in itself from religion. A couple of years later, in 2000, a book was published called "Spiritual but Not Religious: A Call to Religious Revolution in America." And in 2016, College Humor actually published a video called "The Church for People Who Are Spiritual but Not Religious." All right, let's check this out.
Welcome. We are gathered here today because we are spiritual, but not like religious, you know?
I don't believe in organized religion, except for Eastern religion, which I am interested in. It's just like deeper.
We are here today because we reject the bullshit from one book so we can cherry pick and choose the bullshit we like better from a whole bunch of different books. Do we believe in a God with a capital G? Maybe. Maybe not. We haven't decided yet. But tell me that when you look at a sun setting over a hill, you don't feel a connection to something greater.
I'm literally nodding like he is.
In an energy, ooh, that connects us, binds us together, and it's vibrating and stuff. You know what I mean?
I know what he means.
Now, everyone open your Twitter feeds to @Deepak Chopra. Our innermost awareness is a portal to divinity. That is so vague, but I know exactly what he means.
Okay, hold on a second. But That's what spirituality is like, we can't define it. It is that vague, but we know it when we see it.
Hello, everybody. I would like to read a passage from the moleskin I write ideas in when I'm stoned. What if God isn't a he? What if he is a she? Or a deer? Hear me out. I was at a music fest. I was outside taking a piss. And this deer walks up and we make intimate eye contact. And he just started pissing. He was pissing as soon as I was pissing. It was one of the most spiritual things that I've ever experienced. And I light this in remembrance of the first time that I did mushrooms.
Wow. Okay, my thoughts on that is accurate, and I love laughing at myself and laughing at this community because we're hilarious and we make no sense. The spiritual but not religious are my people. So Tara Isabella Burton, who wrote this awesome book called Strange Rites, New Religions for a Godless World, she calls it the shift from institutional to intuitional. Rather than accepting being told what's good for us and for our soul, a lot of us are using a more intuitional approach, where we're doing what feels good to us and what resonates the most with our souls. This shift from institutional to intuitional is also really interesting to tie to this little bit of research that the Pew Research Center found when they shifted their interview system away from phone interviews and into a more digital approach. So what they found when they shifted systems is that figures from the ATP, which is the American Trends Panel, don't match ones from the telephone surveys, even when the questions are asked exactly the same way. For example, when asking Americans about their religious affiliation, the ATP has found a higher share of people who do not identify with any religion. And the ATP has found a much lower share of people who say they regularly attend religious services than RDD surveys do. This is pointing out that the way that we identify religiously is different if we are being asked and we have to be accountable to another person versus if we are asked it in an anonymous survey on our phone. I don't know about you, but to me that shows that the power of religion is more social than it is individual. So as we move into this more informational age where we have more resources at our fingertips, rather than just our pastor telling us what to do, it's interesting that we're seeing this huge shift in how people identify to themselves or to others. So because of this, it's really hard to track the growth exactly, especially because the wording varies from generation to generation and from research center to research center. So some people study the spiritual but not religious, but more often people are studying the religious nuns or the non-affiliated. For the sake of this video, I kind of looked at both the nuns and the SBNRs, spiritual but not religious, because I think that they have a lot of overlap. But that being said, it's not exactly the same. What we can see is that younger people are not as drawn to religion as older people. And that statistic is reflected in almost every study. So Tara Burton, who I mentioned earlier, she has two reasons why she thinks that the younger generation is moving away from religion. First, she points to a broader distrust of structures in general. It is not just religion that us younger people are distrustful of. It's also the government. It's also police. It's also pharmaceutical companies. It's also big banks. It's everything across the board. She also rightly points out that Americans are disillusioned by the behavior of religious leaders, including the Roman Catholic Church's sex scandals and Donald Trump's hugely white supremacist evangelical following. People are just disillusioned by this idea that religiousness inherently means that you are moral. The other trend that she thinks contributes to this move away from religiousness is the increased trend of mixing and matching from different religions to suit what feels right for you. Now, New Age people certainly get a bad rep for this, but it's really happening across religions. There are nuns who meditate, there are atheists who pray, there are Christians who believe in reincarnation. We're finding that people are making their own types of Frankenstein religion religions. Tara Burton calls the spiritual but not religious / not affiliated crowd the religiously remixed, which I'm really fond of. So there are certainly criticisms of being spiritual but not religious, and guess where they usually come from? It's the religious. Here's a quote. "I'd suggest that there's another side to what a lot of people really mean when they say I'm spiritual but not religious. Or even more so, my spirituality is very private. I think that what many people really mean is, I don't want you talking to me about it. I don't want people scrutinizing my faith, because if they do, I'll have to scrutinize it too. And I may discover that my spirituality isn't all that deep or coherent or integrated with the way I really live. Furthermore, if I have to actually start declaring what I believe, I'll be held accountable by what I say. I'll have to actually behave accordingly." Them's fighting words. But I would argue that the speaker of this statement doesn't really understand what spiritual but not religious people do, because we're constantly scrutinizing everything. That's like kind of the whole point. So to clear it up for him, let's go over 3 things that I wanted to identify that as spiritual but not religious people can probably all agree on. What exactly do we believe in? Number 1 is a personal connection to something bigger. Spiritual but not religious people typically think of themselves as being able to directly communicate with their creator, if they believe that there is one. Whether it's a creative force, whether it is the workings of the universe itself, spiritual but not religious people are characterized by a personal connection to the bigger picture and to the divine. The second one is that we are anti-institution. A lot of the time when people do cross over into an institutionalized form of spirituality, it is called a cult, and rightly so. Spiritual people don't really do so well with institutionalized things, telling them what they have to do or how they have to think. Again, this comes down to critical thinking. This comes down to scrutinizing everything and making a personal decision about what we want to accept into our daily practices. And number 3 is that we are redefining God. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier when I was like the creator or the universe or whatever you want to call it, the vibrations. Interestingly, spiritual but not religious people are just as likely to be polytheistic as monotheistic, meaning that it's about half and half, where one group believes that there is one creative God force, and the other half believes that there are many gods. But what's most noteworthy about this is that the definition of God is contested between members of the spiritual but not religious community. What really defines us is that we place a very high value on our freedom to define our own spirituality, and we typically respect people who have come to different conclusions than our own. You can see that I'm getting excited about this because, hello, there's been generations of wars fought over religion, fought over which heaven is right, about who is right about what happens to us and our souls after we die. The fact that there are being more and more spiritual but not religious people gives me hope that people can see eye to eye, even if they don't completely agree on everything, or even if they vehemently disagree, such as people who think there is only one God and people who think that there are many. We are smart people. We are intelligent. We are critical thinkers. We are authentic, and we're badass for breaking the constraints of the things that we were born into. So if you are a spiritual but not religious person, I thank you. We have a lot to teach people about how we are institutionalized and about how we can break free of that and live in a way that's more authentic to ourselves. I'm really excited to see what this growing trend does politically. If we don't have those same religious morals to cling to for certain legislation, then who's to say that things won't change and shift as more people become religiously remixed and are going away from the scripture that tells them the morals that they should and shouldn't espouse in 2022 at the time of this filming. And this isn't really a stretch, because there was a study that found that religiously unaffiliated people were more likely to identify with the ideological left, but more specifically that they were more likely to accept homosexuality. I think the fact that religious people don't accept gay people in 2022 is the cringiest thing I have ever experienced in this life or any of my other lives. It's disgusting. I got news for you. People have been everybody since the beginning of time. That's always how it's been. But because God said that it's a sin, it has been espoused into our legal system, it has been espoused into our society, into bigger issues that make it so that that way people don't have basic human rights. All because the guy in the sky, who they believe is the only right guy in the sky, told them so. So anyway, that's my video for today. I hope that that kind of got you thinking about things. I hope it got you proud to be religiously remixed, spiritual but not religious. And I hope that it kind of starts to answer the question, what is spirituality? Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me. You can find me on everything as Kaycee Flowers, the Spiritual Slut. You can join my new Facebook group called The Spiritual Slut. You can follow me here on YouTube. You can follow me on Facebook at Kaycee Flowers page. Instagram and Twitter I'm still working on, but I'll get it figured out soon. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.